Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine while standing in the dark, a sense of being watched even when alone? It's a primal fear, an instinct deeply ingrained within us, whispering of unseen companions lurking just beyond our sight. These companions, these entities of darkness, are more than just the absence of light. They are the shadows, and they hold secrets. Shadows are as old as time itself, stretching, shrinking, and contorting with the movement of the sun and the moon. They've always been there, silent witnesses to history, both mundane and terrifying. They've seen empires rise and fall, lovers embrace and betray, and all the while they hold their secrets close. But what if the shadows are more than just passive observers? What if they possess a will of their own, a darkness that whispers and writhes with an ancient power? These are the questions that haunt us, that keep us looking over our shoulders when we walk alone at night. They are the questions that lead us to the brink of fear and fascination, urging us to delve deeper into the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows. Emily and Tom were a young couple, brimming with the excitement of new beginnings. They had been searching for the perfect place to call home, a place where they could start their lives together and build a future. They had just purchased a beautiful, albeit slightly dilapidated Victorian house on the outskirts of town. The house had a certain charm, a character that spoke to them both, despite its worn exterior and creaking floors. The house stood tall and imposing, its gables casting long, intricate shadows across the sprawling lawns. It was a place that seemed to hold stories within its walls, stories that were waiting to be uncovered. Little did they know, their new home held more than just the promise of a future. It held a past, a darkness that clung to the corners and whispered through the floorboards. The house had a history, one that was not entirely welcoming. The previous owners had left abruptly, leaving behind an unsettling silence and an air of mystery. There were no explanations, no reasons given, just an empty house filled with unanswered questions. The realtor had brushed it off, muttering about superstitions and old wives' tales. He assured them that the house was just old, that it creaked and groaned like any other house of its age. But Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. There was an unease that settled over her whenever she stepped inside, a feeling that she couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't anything tangible, just a feeling, a prickling at the back of her neck whenever she was alone in the house. It was as if the house was watching her, waiting for something. Tom, ever the pragmatist, dismissed her concerns. He believed that the house was just old and in need of some love and care. He saw only the potential in the old house, the chance to build a life together. He envisioned the house as it could be, a place filled with warmth and laughter. He threw himself into renovating, tearing down wallpaper, ripping up carpets, exposing the bare bones of the house. Each day was a step closer to making the house their own, but with each layer he stripped away, it seemed the shadows grew bolder, more insistent. The house seemed to resist their efforts, as if it had secrets it did not want to reveal. The more they tried to change it, the more it seemed to push back, its dark history seeping into their lives. As the weeks went by, the strange occurrences began. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with small, inexplicable events that could easily be dismissed as coincidences, or the quirks of an old house. Footsteps creaked on the stairs long after Tom had gone to bed. At first he thought it was just the house settling, but the sounds were too deliberate, too rhythmic to be mere creaks of wood. A book would fall from a shelf, seemingly of its own accord. It always seemed to be the same book, an old leather-bound volume that neither Tom nor Emily remembered ever buying. And always, those unsettling whispers, just at the edge of hearing, like silk rustling in the dark. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, filling the house with an eerie, almost tangible presence. Emily tried to convince herself it was just the house settling, the wind playing tricks on her. She would often stand by the window, watching the trees sway in the wind, trying to find a rational explanation for the whispers. But deep down, a seed of unease had taken root in her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. One night, Emily awoke to a cold draft. The air was so frigid it felt like it had seeped into her bones, making her shiver uncontrollably. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long, skeletal shadows across the bedroom wall. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. As she watched, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on shapes that sent shivers down her spine. They looked almost human, but distorted, as if seen through a warped lens. A low growl seemed to emanate from the corner of the room, the sound so deep and primal it vibrated in her bones. It was a sound that spoke of ancient, unknowable things, things that had no place in the modern world. Terrified, Emily shook Tom awake. Her hands were trembling, her voice barely a whisper as she tried to explain what she had seen and heard. He sat up groggily, blinking in the darkness. His mind was still foggy with sleep, but the fear in Emily's eyes was enough to jolt him awake. "What is it, Em? You're shaking." His voice was soft, but there was an edge of concern in it that he couldn't hide. He reached for her, his touch grounding her, reminding her that she wasn't alone. The warmth of his hand was a stark contrast to the cold that had filled the room. She told him about the shadows, the growl, the overwhelming feeling of dread that had gripped her. Her words tumbled out in a rush, each one more frantic than the last. He listened patiently, his expression a mixture of concern and skepticism. He wanted to believe her, but the rational part of his mind struggled to accept what she was saying. Yet, the fear in her eyes was undeniable, and it made him question everything he thought he knew about the world. Tom, a man of logic and reason, remained unconvinced. He was a firm believer in the tangible, the explainable, and the rational. To him, every mystery had a solution grounded in reality. He attributed the strange occurrences to Emily's overactive imagination and the stress of moving. Emily, on the other hand, felt an unshakable sense of unease, as if the house itself was whispering secrets she couldn't quite hear. Determined to put Emily's mind at ease, Tom insisted on checking the entire house, top to bottom, determined to find a rational explanation. He meticulously examined every nook and cranny, convinced that a logical answer lay hidden somewhere within the old walls. But the shadows remained, lurking just at the periphery of their vision, a constant, unsettling presence. They seemed to move with a life of their own, slipping away just as Tom's flashlight beam approached. One evening, as Tom worked on restoring the old fireplace, he stumbled upon a hidden compartment concealed behind a loose brick. The discovery was unexpected, a small secret the house had kept for decades. Inside, he found a small, leather-bound journal, its pages filled with frantic scribblings. The journal was old, its leather cover worn and cracked, the pages yellowed with age. The journal belonged to the house's original owner, a man who claimed to have delved into forbidden knowledge, unlocking secrets that were never meant for mortal eyes. His writings were a mix of fear and fascination, detailing his descent into madness. He wrote of the shadows, describing them not as mere darkness, but as entities with their own desires and motivations. They were not just figments of the imagination, but beings with a sinister purpose. He spoke of bargains struck and prices paid, of a darkness that consumed him from within. The journal entries grew more frantic, the handwriting more erratic, as the man's sanity slipped away. As Tom read, a cold dread settled over him, a chilling realization that the shadows were more than just figments of their imagination. The words on the pages seemed to come alive, painting a picture of a darkness that was all too real. What had these shadows driven the previous owner to do? The journal hinted at unspeakable acts, driven by a force beyond human comprehension. And were Emily and Tom now caught in the same web of darkness, their fates intertwined with the secrets of the house? The realization was terrifying, the thought that they might be powerless against the same malevolent force that had claimed the previous owner. Armed with the knowledge from the journal, Tom and Emily began to see the shadows for what they truly were, manifestations of a power as old as time itself, drawn to the house like moths to a flame. They realized that they couldn't fight the shadows head-on, they had to outsmart them, to use the shadows' own power against them. The journal hinted at a ritual, a way to sever the connection between the house and the shadows. It involved harnessing the very element the shadows thrived on, darkness. They would have to confront their fears, to step willingly into the abyss and hope to emerge on the other side. The ritual was fraught with danger, a delicate dance between light and shadow, where one wrong step could tip the balance in favor of the darkness. But fueled by their love for each other and a desperate hope for survival, Emily and Tom prepared to face the shadows head-on. The ritual was a blur of whispered incantations, flickering candlelight, and the overwhelming presence of the shadows pressing in from all sides. The air crackled with an unseen energy, and the shadows writhed and pulsed, their forms growing ever more menacing. With a final desperate plea, Emily and Tom completed the ritual. A wave of energy pulsed through the house, and for a moment everything went silent. The shadows seemed to recede, their forms dissolving into the darkness. A sense of peace settled over the house, a stillness that was both welcome and unsettling. Had they succeeded? Had they banished the shadows for good? Or was this just a reprieve, a temporary lull in the storm? As they stood there, bathed in the soft light of dawn, they knew that some questions are better left unanswered. The shadows may have retreated, but the experience left an indelible mark on Emily and Tom. They learned that some doors are not meant to be opened, some secrets are best left buried. The house still stands, a silent sentinel overlooking the town. But it is no longer a place of fear. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of corners, there is always a glimmer of hope. Do you dare to delve deeper into the mysteries of the shadows? Are you ready to confront the unseen forces that lurk just beyond the veil of reality? Explore more chilling tales and delve into the unknown at website address or QR code. But be warned, once you step into the shadows, you may never truly escape their grasp.